With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at meistercon.com or on YouTube under MeisterCon Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. I'm so excited today. You know I love talking to fellow podcasters, and I have two of the best with me today, Fritz Coleman and Louise Palanker with me. Welcome, Fritz and Louise.
Happy to be here, Mike. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, it's rare when I get to have fellow podcasters on, but I love it because it's difficult. You know, with podcasting, you don't get to complain about the difficulties of podcasting because nobody really understands it. We were talking a little bit off camera, but with people that actually podcast, I can complain a little bit. It's not as easy as it looks.
Well, we can do a little support group here for you. Just go ahead and we got you.
Because you're totally responsible for your whole presentation. It's not like you have a staff of thousands helping you prepare.
No, you have a writer, producer, director, star, and custodian of the whole thing.
I've got a staff of one, my son, and he's not a staff. It's he does all the hard stuff, and I just come on here and babble, which is, the easier part of the two. The editing, much more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to you both. I've been listening to the podcast, so it's Media Path Podcast, and I really, really like it because it's very nostalgic in a lot of ways, and a lot of the guests that you have on and the topics that you talk about have to do with time periods that I grew up in. So it's really really interesting to me, but I don't want to start there. We'll get to the podcast. Definitely want to talk about it because it's great. I want to know a little bit more about the two of you. So, Louise, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your background and what got you to this point.
Well, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I was a nerdy kid, and I had a lot of really keen interests that were kind of sort of circling around the whole entertainment region of things. I loved reading. I loved music. I spent all my money on books and records. I wasn't interested in clothes or makeup or the girly things at all. I ran with the boys. I played a lot of sports. And, I just did what interested me. And I dreamed of coming to Hollywood and getting into entertainment, but nobody in Buffalo ever talks about that. There's no uncle in the business. You just kind of dream of it, but you don't really say it out loud. So I went and became a teacher. I got my teaching degree. And then, when it was time to go to grad school, I thought maybe I'll get my master's. And then I said to my parents, I'd like to move to California. Well, we do have relatives here, so I could get started that way. But as soon as I started grad school, I started looking for internships in the entertainment industry. And that was, I recommend for every kid, whatever you're trying to get into, you give it away and then before someone will be willing to pay for it. Just get to know people, make yourself indispensable. And that's how you can advance in a difficult career.
Yeah, I actually love that. And I've given that advice to my son. Now he's working now. He does the podcast and he's a librarian now. So he's working kind of, but a few years ago, he had the idea that it was just going to, you just put it out there and immediately you're successful. So we had to work through some of that. You gotta put a little investment in before it starts happening. Well, Fritz, how about you? I know you've got an interesting background as well. So talk a little bit about that. What got you to this point?
Well, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to Salem College. And,
here in West Virginia. I was so happy to hear that.
Not to denigrate your state at all, but Salem was a college for high school underachievers. It's the one I could squeak into. And after I started at Salem, I did 2 years of continuing to underachieve. And that was the part of American history where the draft was still in existence. And
Yeah.
if you dropped below a C average in college, you would lose your student deferment. And I cleared that bar by a mile. And my second year, I fell way below the C average. And 60 days to the day after I was notified I had below a C average, I got a letter from the Defense Department inviting me to come down and get naked and do a physical for the Defense Department. And when I went down there, I made the greatest decision I ever made in my life, which was all these guys who were going in the Army were going to Vietnam. I was happy to serve my country. I thought I would do it better in a non-gun oriented way. So I picked up my clothes and all I had was my socks on, and I walked down the line of desks of the recruiters and immediately enlisted in the Navy, which was the best decision I ever made. I spent 4 years in the Navy. I worked for Armed Forces Radio and Television, which gave me my career. When I got out of the Navy, I did 15 years in the radio business. Then I started the stand-up comedy business in California. And when I was doing stand-up, I got invited to be a vacation relief weather forecaster at NBC in Los Angeles, because I had talked on stage about having done the weather in the Navy, but not knowing anything about it, but nobody cared. And so I got a chance to do vacation fill-in weather. And then I was bumped up to the main weather job at NBC Los Angeles. And I retired 2 years ago, 2 weeks before my 40th anniversary at NBC.
Wow.
A huge stroke of good luck. But I was doing stand-up the whole time. So I was a local weather forecaster, but doing stand-up. I opened for Ray Charles and Debbie Reynolds. I was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Johnny Carson 8 times and worked around the United States, had 4 one-person shows. Louise was the producer of a couple of those. And so I've had a varied career, but I'm very fortunate at all the good luck I've had.
Yeah, I remember you on some of those Tonight shows. That was my mother to this day. Still, she stays up all night and then sleeps till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's just her. So as a kid growing up, I would stay up, with her. I couldn't stay up all night, but I'd make it through Carson and then Leno later on from there. So I do remember some of those. So you stand-up comedy for both of you, that wasn't hard enough. You decided podcasting. That's
well, Louise dipped her toe in the podcasting world long before I did. She's had 4 or 5 different types of podcasts and was there at the inception of the whole podcasting industry. I was not allowed to do that stuff when I was under contract to Channel 4 at NBC. And so when I finally retired and I was free of contractual obligations, she invited me to come on. We've been friends for 30 years and saw eye to eye on lots of stuff, movies and books and all that. So we just thought it'd be cool to continue our regular conversations and include other people. We made a podcast out of it.
And I spent a lot of my career in radio. I started a company called Premier Radio Networks. I was always working behind the scenes in the radio. So for me, podcasting, when it first became available, that seemed like something that would be not a problem for me because I'm just accustomed to working in radio and creating radio content.
Yeah, I was told, Louise, that you possibly invented podcasting.
That would be a myth. I didn't invent it any more than Al Gore invented the internet. But yeah, I had a very early podcast with my fellow comedian friend Laura Swisher. We called it Wheezy and the Swish. And we even went on an NBC show. I don't know if you remember that, Fritz, but we went on an NBC morning show to talk about women in podcasting. It was so revolutionary. You're letting women talk in this field? Oh my goodness. That was probably clear
back in like 2019 or something.
What year was that, Louise?
I want to say like 2005 or something like that. When was I'm not good with numbers, but math, but I guess you'd have to look back at when podcasting first, like what actually was the first podcast. That'd be a good history. That'd be a good
This
And
meeting
we're
is
back.
being recorded.
You want me to give you a pickup?
Yeah, please.
I'm not sure what year podcasting became available. It may have been when a new iPhone was released in the App Store, and around that time period. So as soon as you could, I was all in, because I love the idea of putting on a show, and technology lets us do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it was right around 2005, just from what I've read. Now, back then, 2005 podcasting a little different than what we're doing now.
It was audio only. We did it in the same studio where Fritz and I are doing our podcast, but I just kind of contacted people that I thought would know more than I did about the technological, how do you actually, we knew how to record a show, but how do you actually put it on the internet in a way where it's going to Apple? It's not a straight path to Apple. You have got to be, this is more shop talk for us podcasters, but you've got to get it on a platform that pushes it to all the podcasting sites. And you have to jump through a lot of hoops and configure yourself to where there's consistency when people are looking around for podcasts.
Yeah, because there's only, a billion podcasts. I always say that the best thing about podcasting is anybody can do it. But the worst thing about podcasting is anybody can do it.
Yeah. That is true.
When you're starting out, you have to put it out of your mind that millions of people are not listening. It's a slow build. You just have to do it for the love of it. And then as people sort of attach themselves to it, you become pleasantly surprised. Because I think that the number is there are 150,000 podcasts in the United States. And it's not like radio and TV where you can carve out a huge chunk of audience right away. You just have to do a slow build, get better and better at it, and leave it to fate.
Consistency is a big part of it, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of podcasts with 5 episodes because people realize how much of their week it really utilizes. And there's just a lot. There's a lot that's required. And I would say, with you and your son, I would say if you want to start your own podcast, get with somebody that knows a part of it, that where you're weak, they're strong, and kind of work with somebody that you can depend upon. Family member helps. With Fritz and I, we feel like family. So I've had podcast partners where they just kind of call you an hour before and sorry, can't make it.
Yeah.
So not everybody takes it as seriously, as you do, but you need to find that person who's going to be dependable, reliable, and then bring to the table something that is a strength that you don't have, whether it's on the technological end or the research end. Fritz and I both love the same things. And so when we book a guest, we'll kind of dig deep, do the research, just like you've done for our appearance here with you. We'll read the books, we'll study up on the people so that the conversation is nice and smooth and fun and engaging. And you get into, it's sort of like, I look at podcasting as a way to have a really deep conversation very quickly. You're going to jump past small talk and get into stuff that really matters to people. And I find that really, really intriguing.
Yeah, I do as well.
We found, and I'm sure you agree with this, Mike, because I know you do it. When your guests realize that you are prepared, like you did some work into the background, it relaxes them and they trust you immediately. And they open up even more than they might if it's just a superficial, kind of a flighty conversation about a bunch of topics that don't matter, a cocktail conversation. When they realize that you've done some work on their background, they love it and they loosen up and they're happy to express themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll give away one of my tricks, but we were talking about my useless knowledge. One part of that useless knowledge is I'm really good at knowing the kind of obscure things that actors have done, especially early in their career. Well, when you bring that stuff up, a lot of times they're thrilled to talk about something that they don't get asked about ever. And it loosens them up and you can get into a really good conversation.
Yeah.
That's a good trick.
Yeah. So the podcast is Media Path Podcast. And I love it, but tell me what it's about.
Weezy?
Well, we kind of like take a look at the media landscape and make suggestions for people as to what we enjoyed. We don't review and we don't speak badly about anything. Anything creative has taken a lot of people working very hard. So I'm not comfortable telling people what I didn't like. I think that that's only helpful in terms of what to avoid anyway. Like if you hear a bad movie review, you're like, all right, this person didn't like it and maybe I'll skip it. I think it's more helpful to tell people what you did like. And that's what Fritz and I do. And then when we have guests on, we talk about what they've written, what they've recorded, what they've appeared in. And so we just take them down that media path. And also one of the advantages of technology that I just absolutely adore is that if you get intrigued by something, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and with a few clicks and you can just keep going. So on the media path, for example, this week, Fritz recommended the Ken Burns documentary. Well, if you like that Ken Burns documentary about the Holocaust and the United States response to it, you can either go into more Ken Burns or you can go into the Holocaust. There's a number of different directions that you can go to learn more about any subject that interests you. And so that's what we do. We kind of just steer people towards what they might find that will entertain, inform, and delight them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's terrific. And I listened to you had Don Knotts' daughter.
Yeah, she's
on one of
great.
the episodes. Don Knotts was born in West Virginia. So I was like, oh,
that's right.
Check that out. Yeah.
And in her book, she talks about West Virginia a ton. There's a lot about West Virginia in her book. So it's called Tied Up in Knots by Karen Knotts. And it's, if you love anything about Mayberry or, the Andy Griffith Show or Don Knotts, read her book. It's absolutely a delight. And she came to West Virginia and interviewed. I think she went on a radio show and she said, if you knew my dad, or if your dad knew my dad, or your mom or your grandma knew your dad, I want to talk to you. And she spent time interviewing. The first half of her book is all the stories of people from West Virginia who knew her dad. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. How do you find your guests? Do you come up and, with the idea and say, okay, we're going to try to get this person, or does something else, give you the thought, okay, we should have this person on?
Well, we have a booker, and Weezy and I have some ideas, some areas that we like to cover. We love to talk about politics. We love to talk about movies. We love to talk about 50s, 60s, and 70s television heroes. Yeah. We call it woke boomers. We're of that certain age. And what we do is give suggestions to our booker. Also, our booker also books a hugely popular radio station around here. So she gets approached by publicists all the time. So some interesting guests are funneled to her. And if she finds one that kind of fits our template, then she'll direct us to it. And some of them are our personal friends. Weezy's a huge fan of The Bachelor, so she's going to have a couple of female comedian friends of hers, and they're going to dissect the entire season of The Bachelor and diss all the guys who blew it and diss the guy who won it and all this stuff. And so that'll be fun. I'll just sit in the background having a sandwich because I'm clueless about that. but next week, we're going to have a friend of mine, Martha Bolton, who for 20 years was a writer for Bob Hope. And she's got great anecdotes about writing for his show. And she's written a couple of books. And her most recent book is stories about the letters that he wrote back and forth with soldiers who he really affected during his World War II performances. So some of it's friends, some of it's booking from our booker, and some of it is chance. And we've been on for a while now. So a lot of publicists are beginning to trust us with their mainline clients. The clients will say they had a great experience with us. We did our homework. So the next client, it's a greased path to come on with us.
That's right.
Yeah, it's really, it's a lot of it is us getting pitched and then deciding whether or not it's a good fit for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'm our booker. I do the booking.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Like I said, it's a lot of jobs. You do a lot of jobs.
You wear a lot of hats. And I will say that, initially much more difficult. But now that we've been doing this for several years, we've got those relationships with publicists and agents, managers, and now it's not as difficult because I don't have to give them the full spiel. I can just reach out to them, and if somebody's available, fine. If they're not, and then they'll in turn just send people to us, which is terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what led you to wanting to do? I know you guys have been wanting to do a podcast together for a while, but why now? What was the reason that you got together now?
It was really Fritz's retirement, because I came to him a number of years ago because I was doing a podcast for teenagers, advice for teenagers, and I had a panel of teenagers, high school kids that would come on, and I had an app in the App Store, and the kids would ask questions, and then the kids on the panel would field the questions like, oh, this girl is being mean to me, and I think we both like the same boy, and blah, blah, blah. So then the panel would weigh in, and I would always just wonder which kids were going to show up. And then, at the last minute, like, no, he has homework, and parents wouldn't treat it like a school play. Like, you can't miss this. This is an obligation. It would just be, no, he's being punished, so he can't go. Like it was some fun thing he did. And one day, I was complaining to my husband about it, and he said, well, what would be your dream podcast? And I said, with Fritz. And so Fritz and I went to lunch, and I think he liked the idea, but he went back and checked with his boss, because I think he had a feeling it was going to be a no, because weathermen are not supposed to have any opinion beyond some sort of like cloud formation or, marine layer.
It's just a general services contract with NBC. They got to approve everything I did. And I had to get my stand-up approved. Not every single one,
really? But
I would do 2 or 3 shows a week. And I had to promise my boss, that's why I work clean on stage. My boss said, I will allow you to perform anywhere you want because it's great public relations for the television station. But the first time I get a complaint call about you, like you've embarrassed yourself or the audience or the television station, you're going to stop. So I was pretty meticulous about sticking to my word about that the whole time. But that was the only time they'd let me wander outside my contractual obligations. So I couldn't do a podcast. Any media they controlled.
This is an interesting question, because I just think they don't want anyone having a distracting thought while you're pointing to weather systems, because there was a guy on the news yesterday who had gone on some sexy site and done some sexy things, and it was like I think they called it a moral, what's it called, Fritz, where you're just anyway, one of the screen caps got sent by probably someone that was angry at him for like breaking up with him or whatever, but it got a moral clause. Yeah. It got sent to everybody, and his boss and his mother, which is just sickening.
That's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible.
And this guy lost his job. So yeah, you have to, you've got to live your life within certain parameters so that when people are watching you do the news, they're not thinking about something else.
It's the same about all social media. If you were on Facebook or Twitter or any of the social sites, it had to be something related to the station, mainly promotional. Like, be sure to watch me at 5 o'clock today because the temperature is going to go up 2 degrees or something stupid. And you were only allowed to do job-oriented posts. And, when I first started in the business, there was no social media, so there wasn't a digital paper trail. So you could really screw up badly if you said something embarrassing, and they could get you. So I'm amazed I made it through my career without messing myself up, without sticking my foot in my mouth.
When you think of all the moral clauses that he probably broke along the way,
Right.
like walking through his day, and, flipping somebody off in traffic, if someone had taken a picture of that and that had gone viral, here's Fritz.
See you later.
Flashing
It's
the birds.
so much more difficult now. Like when we were growing up, there was no cell phones, there was no internet, there was no social media. So a lot of that stuff, if you were doing something that you shouldn't have been doing, you may have got away with it. That just doesn't happen now.
How old's your son, Mike?
He's 22.
Oh, okay, well, he's beyond the envelope of death and destruction from the internet. But I always empathize with my children, and now I have grandchildren. And I always said the most horrible part about social media is if you had a beef with somebody at school, if you were bullied or you had an argument with somebody, on the weekend, it would stay with the two parties. It would have 48 hours to cool off, and you'd go back to work and many times even forget what the issue was.
Yeah, that's right.
But with social media, this negativity and the bullying and the darkness can follow you home, and you have no escape from it. And I mean, I feel really bad for kids. It's horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
there are plenty of examples of suicide and trouble for kids who weren't able to escape the online attacks from bullies and stuff. So it's hard. It makes it hard to grow up right now. I don't know why I wandered off in that area, but we were
No, but you're exactly right. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm a new a pawpaw. I'm a pawpaw is what they call me. But it's, I worry about them. They're all very young. The oldest is just 3 years old. But you worry about them growing up because of that. Like when Facebook first came out, I thought, well, this is a great idea. I can find all the people that I went to school with. I can share some of my pictures. It's great. That lasted about 5 minutes, and then it just went downhill since then.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of wonderful advantages.
There is.
It's in terms of like just connecting people, like, oh, this person should know this person. And, you just kind of like put them together in the same little Facebook message, say, hey, you two should know each other. And I don't know, there's so much good that can come of it. But, I think that we have to, from jump, kids, your grandkids are native users. And from jump, you need to tell them, just like you warn them not to cross the street unless they're holding your hand, there's certain things that they should learn from jump, that this is dangerous. And that there's people on the internet, just like I won't let you wander, through this factory with all this like machinery that can cut your arm off. I'm not going to let you wander in.
And if you help them build a hardy self-esteem,
they'll
go into it not as easily swayed as some child that's looking for his only connection. He doesn't have connections in person. He has connections on the internet. That's when you get into trouble.
That's key. Let them know they're loved, and then they won't be seeking it in all the wrong places on the internet. They'll be able to look at a post and go like, this is creepy, and show it to you and like, exactly, block this person. You don't owe them any kind of like explanation as to why you stopped talking. Just block them.
Yeah. No, I think that's all really good advice. I saw one of the quotes from your podcast, and it said, reminding people of what they love and why they love it. And I was like, oh, that's good. That was a good line. But what does that mean?
Anything that you loved as a child stays in your heart forever.
Yeah.
And, whether it's the smell of fresh baked cookies or, your favorite boy band or the sports team or the motorcycle that your dad had, whatever it is, like people our age, whatever was the first thing you Googled when you could Google something, that's, you go through a period in your 20s, like, oh, that's not cool. I'm over that. And then in your 30s, you're like, no, I love that. And I'm going to love that forever.
That's right.
And that's what we try to reconnect people with, that not only is it okay to love it, but you should love it because it warms your soul. And this music or this content or this performer or whatever, now the internet makes it so that, if you love the Four Preps, like we had a gentleman from the Four Preps on our show. I'm going to edit it today and post it tomorrow. And his name is Bruce Belland, and he is the founder of the Four Preps. And they did that song 26 Miles Across the Sea. Santa Catalina is a place for me. And it's just like, you hear that and you're like, I need to listen to the Four Preps all day now, and that's available to you. It's all right there on the internet.
And
that's the good part of the internet.
Yeah.
I'm sure you find the same thing, Mike. If Weezy and I are entering into a conversation about stuff that we're passionate about, it makes for a far better interview. So part of the explanation of that phrase is, if we're engaged in it, the audience automatically will be engaged in it.
Well, I know when we first started out, we were reaching out to people that we were fans of. That's how we started. And those initially you didn't have to do a ton of prep because that was somebody you were really fans of, but you learn as you go along. Even if you're a fan, it pays off if you spend that, hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, just prepping ahead of time so that it's all fresh in your mind and you're ready to talk to somebody about it. Did you kind of find that as well? Did you have to, I know you've had, both of you have had background in similar things, but did you have to develop, that interviewing style and the skill set that goes along with it?
Well, I did interviews a little bit in my job. I would go out and do live broadcasts and talk to people on the street, but Wheezy's whole career was interviewing people and then giving tapes of those interviews to small and medium market radio stations all around the United States. So she had a lot of experience.
I mean, what it is that, like, you could be really interested in it. Like, this guy, Bruce from the Four Preps, they were the band that backed up Ricky Nelson. That predates my childhood. I'm fascinated by it, but I wasn't familiar with it at the time. So yeah, you study up. There's only like a few things that you could extemporaneously talk about without doing a little bit of prep work. But the art of interviewing, that for me, like what Fritz said, I've interviewed thousands. I've got probably about 30 of them that I put up on SoundCloud that I was able to salvage. But that's something that I like to treat, like prepare some questions, but really treat it like a conversation. And that's what Fritz and I do. We're prepared. We have our note. Now you can have an iPad in front of you and stuff. And you can really just kind of, like, if they say something that makes you think of a follow-up question, you can go ahead and ask it. Fritz and I signal each other. Like, if he has a follow-up that he wants to get to before the question floats away, like, he signals to me, and we just do it like that. But yes, preparation, I think, is the best key to spontaneity.
Yeah, I like the conversation style. I do the same thing because I think people get tired of being interviewed, where they're just, you get the same questions and it's kind of becomes rote. You're just responding to the same thing over and over again. Or if you have a conversation, you can kind of just let it lead you where it takes you.
Yeah. Right. And your guests are delightfully surprised when you don't ask them the typical questions that 500 other interviewers have asked them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I try to avoid that. You can't do it all the time because, some things, that's what everybody wants to hear. But I think it's really, it gets really interesting when you can find stuff that who you're interviewing is passionate about, but nobody really knows that they're passionate about. Those to me are the fun ones.
Yeah.
You have to start with the basics and let your listeners know who these people are, and then you can just, take it from there.
Yeah. What do you do when you have a guest on your podcast and it's not going as well as you want it to? For whatever reason, maybe they're having a bad day or they're not as responsive as you want. How do you get them kind of out of that shell and get them to participate in the podcast?
I don't think we've run into that. Have we, Fritz?
Not yet. I'll tell you, we run into the opposite, Mike. We run into people who are after we uncork the bottle, they won't stop talking. So we just sit there and stare at one another and going, well, we have to wrap this up in 10 minutes. But that's an embarrassment of riches. I would rather have that than the other thing.
Yeah.
Somebody answers in single syllable words, and it's like pulling teeth. We haven't had too many experiences of that so far. And again,
all right, so we lost signal. Fritz and Louise were dropped out of the Zoom. We tried for several minutes to reconnect. We weren't able to do it. So I am very sorry that we're not going to have the smooth ending that we would normally have to the show. But Fritz and Louise were terrific. If you haven't yet, Media Path Podcast, go and check it out. It is terrific, especially if you're very nostalgic like I am for the those past decades, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. They have so much terrific content that has to do with entertainers or things that happened during those decades. So definitely check that out. I absolutely hate that we didn't get to wrap it with them, but we'll bring them back. We'll get them back on. They were just terrific. And if you want to see how a podcast should be done professionally, the sound quality is just terrific. Absolutely check out the Media Path podcast. Both of them are so funny. They've got such a good humor about them, and their interaction with each other and the way that they kind of play off of each other. You can tell they've been friends for a really long time. It's exactly the way I hope that Brett and I interact when we are on camera together. You guys will have to let me know, but I think that we do a pretty good job with that as well. So I hope you enjoyed what we were able to get. It was a really good conversation. We just didn't get to wrap. We were getting right at the to the end there. If you haven't done so yet, we're trying to grow our YouTube channel. You can help us with that. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us out. We're so proud of the fact that we're closing in on 500 episodes. That just doesn't happen very often with podcasting. We've been doing this now we're coming up on 4 years. 500 is we're probably going to hit that. Let's see, we're September, definitely before the end of the year, but I'm guessing somewhere near the end of November, we'll probably hit our 500th episode. And we owe that to all of you. If we didn't have the support of our listeners and the people watching us on YouTube, we definitely could not have gotten there. So thank you so much. But if you're just discovering us for the first time, I promise, normally it doesn't end this way, but hopefully you found enough that you enjoyed that you'll come back and that you'll subscribe. If you're listening, same thing. Wherever you're listening to your podcast, help us out by subscribing. We'd really appreciate it. You can find right now we're on 460. You can find all of those, audio and video, on our website, meistercon.com. It has a terrific blog. It's well written. It's geeky. It's fun that Brett does. If we're doing anything in studio, if we're going on location, if we're covering a convention, all of that will be on the website, meistercon.com. So definitely check that out. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us again this week. Until next time, bye, everybody.